Welcome to Posh Towns.
You rang, my lord.
Hello and welcome back to the channel that brings you the lesser known places in the UK. For bad reasons, but today it's actually for good reasons, as I visit the poshest towns and villages in Dorset County. You know what, I still reckon Dorset is probably the prettiest county overall. Home to around 750,000 people, but most of them are down in the Bournemouth and Poole area, which means there is a lot of empty rolling hills here. The perfect hideout for the posh people to ignore the chaos and destruction going on in the country right now, and they can spend the rest of their jolly little lives picking up pints of real ale, rather than picking up news needles. Outside of seeing the poshest towns and villages in Dorset, I did have a bit of an agenda here. I wanted to visit some larger but wealthier places to see just how their high streets are coping. Will they also be filled with smashed up shops, vape shops and barbers? Or will they be greengrocers and guns? The only real rule that I've implemented here is that the place must have a shop to qualify for the list. Now, I bet you all think you know what number 1 is going to be. But no, Turdtowns has got a curveball for you. By the way, please don't yell at me about the lack of drone footage here, the weather was too poor once again. I am such a stereotypical Englishman. I'm pretty sure that I've moaned about the weather for the last 5 videos now. Be it hot or cold, I still complain. Anyway, don't forget to hit like, share and subscribe to help Turdtowns thrive. Number 8. Wimborne Minster. Staying true to my word, we're kicking off today's list with the market town of Wimborne with a population of 16,630. I did promise you some larger places today, so here we go. Sometimes you could just tell a place is posh by only its name. It's not Hull, Grimsby or Redroof, it's Wimborne Minster. It's hard to make fun of places like this. Yeah, straight away the shopping area is light years ahead of what we normally see on this channel. I wasn't the only one that was shocked. There were actually tourists here gasping in awe, like Katie Price on her 5th disposable vape of the day, that summer in the UK is not completely dead. Dare I say it was actually nice to spend time here. Flowers, well-lit streets and welcoming shop fronts were everywhere. The town planners of Wimborne live and breathe for the town. It's basically their baby and they are very protective. And they aren't dummies either. This year a hand car wash wanted to open up in the town centre. The planners shot down the idea, saying that it would destroy the posh image of Wimborne. It didn't really help that there weren't any abandoned petrol stations about to take over, and besides, Wimborne residents just have their servants wash the cars for them. Or maybe they actually wash their own cars whilst being forced by their servants in some sort of sick power exchange game. Use of a sponge is prohibited and a lash of the tongue is encouraged, although fortunately Wimborne streets are pretty clean. In Wimborne there are strict rules about what you can and can't build in the town centre. Basically it has to pass a fit or an ugly test, just like an Ali G immigration policy. It's a shame that more towns can't adopt this methodology. It also helps that Wimborne doesn't have an out-of-town shopping centre, and it also only has one small Waitrose, which is the centre of their universe. Perhaps it proves to us all today that town centres really wouldn't be doing quite so bad if we had competent people in charge. The average house price here is $422,000, which is high considering the size of the town. It gets worse when you try to rent. Yeah, I'm going to be trying to include rent figures where possible thanks to a recent suggestion. These are going to be based on what's currently on the market, and the average monthly rent here is just shy of £2,000 a month. Ouch. Time to laugh at Wimborne residents though, because they do have one massive boarded up building in the town centre, and what an eyesore this thing is. It is massive. It's a former home furnishing shop. Perhaps Wimborne residents realise that there's only so much crushed velvet one can own. Wimborne also isn't spared a telephone exchange. What's interesting is that it's built the same year as the one from the last video. Wow, we actually constructed building projects in unison with towns up and down the country once upon a time. It's not as ugly as usual either, at least from the front. Like your Aunt Beatrice trying to squeeze into a pair of leggings 3 sizes too small. From behind she looks like mashed potato in a tea towel. And to get a bit more serious, away from the town centre, it stops feeling posh, and it feels pretty much like anywhere else. The poor police force are caged into one of the ugliest buildings of all time. No wonder so many of them are leaving the force. I would too if I had to breathe in asbestos and tears every day. My conclusion with Wimborne is it's more of a nice, successful town than a posh town. This is one that won't stain your silk satin underwear. Number 7. Cranborne. Almost off to Wiltshire for this one. Cranborne is a village with a population of 579. It felt a bit like a posh version of the Hills Have Eyes. It was like some hillbillies had won the lottery. I was astounded that the average house price here was $610,000. Yes, the main village centre area is extremely nice and did feel posh, but away from that, the village is nothing. Hilariously, this actually used to be a town frequented by kings like King John and King Henry VIII. But over the years it got less and less important here, and locals still long for the days of dumping in a hole and starving peasants. Maybe they should move to Bournemouth. The population of this place has continued to shrink over the years, and hopefully soon Cranborne will completely disappear up its own arse. One of the main draws for Cranborne is, despite its small size, it seems to have far more shops and pubs than you would expect for such a small place. This means it probably has a strong community spirit, and they all share a road-killed pheasant on the village green after work. I particularly loved the giant empty ditch running through the village. It reminded me of Lincolnshire, but without water. Or, as it appears, maybe there is some water in there after all. Pretty dangerous. No, this place isn't dangerous though, it feels very safe and secluded here. I really got the impression that outsiders never come here. I was torn apart by suspicious eyes on more occasions than I care to remember. I did stop to ask them where the poshest places in Dorset were, and they of course said here. They were so up themselves that they demanded I leave and pelted me of crumpets until I agreed that Cranborne was the poshest place in Dorset. Now that I'm safely away from them, it isn't the poshest place in Dorset. Number 6, Abbotsbury. Jumping over to West Dorset for the first time for the village of Abbotsbury of a population of 455. It's another little pretty old place hidden away by the hills, and it's also tapped into the tourism sector. Along with the village looking postcard perfect, it also has a swannery, an abbey and subtropical gardens. Abbotsbury is practically ancient, although most of the medieval buildings were burned down by fires. Most likely accidental ones and not the work of a chavvy bored 13-year-old trying to light their first cigarette. You know a place is posh when they have unattended stalls set up outside their homes. There are no criminals around here. It's tradition in Abbotsbury for once a year the children to rip up daffodils from people's gardens and threaten the village folk for money. The tradition exists as rich people are extremely tight and threatening them is the only way to get money out of them. Plus, they're actually too tight to give their own children pocket money. Back in 2021, the average house price was over $1 million here, but it's good to see that it's dropped down to $508,000 now. Perhaps everyone was too afraid of the flower power within the village. The butchers actually hit the news here this year as they've been trying to deport the lady owner of the shop who was from South Africa. She left there due to the change in regime and arrived in the UK on a spousal visa. Despite investing $65,000 in the business and the shop being a vital part of the community, they still wanted to deport her. Eventually she won the battle, but the whole situation was shocking to the village, who didn't quite know how they would have been able to survive without their wildebeest steaks. The Daily Telegraph published a list of the poshest places in Britain, and Abbotsbury was on that list. Much of Abbotsbury is owned by Charlotte Townsend, one of the UK's richest women, who inherited all of her money. She was also a member of the aristocracy and is the only person other than King Charles allowed to keep swans. Yeah, to my USA viewers, there are still some really draconian laws in place here. In my opinion, the right thing for her to do this Christmas would be to treat struggling Dorset families to a Christmas feast. How about roast swan? Very tasty, very sweet. Number 5, Milton Abbas. Off to the middle of nowhere we go. Milton Abbas is a photogenic village with a population of 730. There's a reason that Milton Abbas is so pretty, and it's a pretty funny one too. Back in the 1700s, a market town called Milton was situated just near here. But the landowner was very sick and disgusted with the town ruining the views from his manor house, so he decided to flatten the whole town, flood it with a lake, and then build a new village hidden away in a valley. The new village was fortunately designed by an architect and a landscaper, once again proving that the designers and the architects of the past were far more talented. But it gets funnier. Currently, Milton Abbas has an average house price of $512,000, making it one of the most expensive places in Dorset. People are just so obsessed with these houses, which are essentially just mud huts. That's right folks, these houses are built from cob, which is a mixture of mud, sand and straw. When the owner had them built back in the day, he did it on the cheap, and now these houses are far from cheap. Using that logic, maybe one day Cumbernauld in Scotland will be viewed as luxurious. I saw lots of houses being renovated here, whilst other homes do surprisingly come on the market regularly. There's actually 8 houses for sale on this street. So yeah, most of this village is set in its own tiny valley, with lots of identical houses. Fortunately, they chose to copy and paste nice houses. But there is more of the village up on the hillside above it, and it's not quite as pleasing on the eye. Shows how planning went seriously wrong in this country. Shouldn't they have been forced to build similar looking houses if they were going to extend the village? We have got a shop here which is open 9 till 4 most days except Sundays. That would be very inconvenient if anyone here actually had to work. It basically looks like someone's house and is easy to miss. But hang on, as you walk around here, you can't help but miss this. What is this rubbish? Something has gone seriously wrong here. In a village this beautiful, how do you not make a pub work? Before this pub shut, it had horrible reviews on TripAdvisor, with most comments talking about how miserable the bar staff were and the drunken owner. Admittedly, the village is quite out of the way, and a quick glance at Rightmove will show you that half of the village is up for sale. So perhaps running the village pub was impossible during the winter months without tourists. I still see this as a missed opportunity though. They should have brought in Alex Polizzi. She would have sorted them right out. If you think you could do better, you can buy this pub for $450,000. Also, around the village we have a private school and an abbey. That definitely screams posh. So if you fancy moving back in history to live in a mud hut and eating caviar, Milton Abbas is the place for you. Number 4, Studland. Studland is a coastal village with a population of 406. Not really a fan of this one. There was nothing here. Unlike everywhere else on this list, it just didn't feel like there was any community at all. Just the one random shop on a crossroads and some big houses scattered about. The road was busy and it wasn't particularly nice here. It felt like many of the posh villages in Devon, but at the same time far less impressive. Studland seems to follow the trends of its neighbour just across the water. More and more historic houses are being knocked down, only to be replaced by glass boxes. The obscene waste of money in these communities is startling. Why would you want to live in a glass box when everyone from the road can see you picking your nose and eating it? Part of the problem is that the really posh part of Studland is on a private and exclusive glebe estate where I cannot venture. I don't blame them for not letting Turdtowns roam around your estate. It's bound to bring down the property prices. An article from this year claimed that a whopping 50% of Studland is second homes. That cannot be nice for people who've lived here all of their lives. Recently, a $2.8 million 1920s Vickers home is being knocked down to make way for a glass box. Isn't it about time we get some transparency? We all know that money talks, so the council should just admit that it bends the rules for certain individuals. Meanwhile, Ryan and Carrie struggle to get planning permission for a garage conversion in Bradstock. It's just not right. The level of corruption in this country is so glossed over.
Well, that's actually okay because I'm probably the first person ever who's visiting this toilet for a different reason. Now don't worry guys, not a sponsorship. I've got a great reason for this one to be showing up for you today. It's a turd exchange. Yes, here it is then. For the first time ever on Turdtowns, we have a toilet phone exchange. I don't know where this joke keeps going. Before I started this channel, I'd honestly got no interest at all in telephone exchanges, but since I've been going round and round the towns, it's just something that's grown within me. I'm now obsessed with telephone exchanges for some reason. I actually had a chat with a lady earlier, tried to explain why I was filming a toilet vlog, and my explanation about the telephone exchange wasn't any better. There's apparently 2 telephone exchanges here as well. That is just greedy Studland, come on. But yeah, lovely turd exchange here.
The beaches of Studland are some of the most popular in the southwest, so it's got that going for it. But ultimately, Studland is faceless and boring. It just doesn't really have a style, and it should change its name to Blandland. Number 3. Lyme Regis. Heading over to the far reaches of West Dorset for this one, here we have that pretty famous seaside town with a population of 3,743. Out of all the UK seaside towns, Lyme Regis is the 7th most expensive. During the summer months it can feel as busy as a city here. It doesn't really feel posh though. A quick glance at it feels like any other seaside town. Slightly grey and gloomy, windy and seagulls dumping everywhere, but mostly on you as you pay for your parking. For the size of the place, Lyme Regis is very expensive. Much of it feels like a traditional English fishing village, but upon closer inspection you'll find that much of it is Airbnbs. They are infected everywhere here like a plague. It was reported last year that 1 in 13 homes here is a holiday home, leaving locals struggling to get on the property ladder. As we head off to the high street, you find that most of the shops here are just catering to tourists. You know, the sort that you always see in posh seaside towns. Locals are upset that they no longer have a greengrocers and a fishmongers to serve them. Dorset Council recently introduced a second home tax, which is likely to net them around £8 million a year. Despite that, it didn't stop somebody trying to sell a wooden beach hut for $245,000 this year. If you want to buy an actual house and not a hut, the price here is the average of $527,000. Or you can rent one out for $1,300 a month. There is more stereotypical modern posh houses here, but they're mostly on the steep hill above Lyme, and I couldn't be bothered to walk up there just to film some 10-foot high electric gates. Lyme Regis is of course famous for being a place where you can hunt for old fossils. It's really easy, you don't have to try hard at all. Most of them are just waddling around the streets. Something else famous to Lyme Regis is Reggie the bottlenose dolphin. A random rich dolphin used its daddy's trust fund to take over a spot in the Lyme Regis Bay. He appeared friendly at first, but eventually got so sick of living in Lyme Regis that he snapped. 2 women were trying to swim with him and take selfies when the dolphin decided to try and drown them. You can't really blame him. I mean, I'm not exactly photogenic myself, especially on a Monday morning. I was actually surprised to find that there were possibly half a dozen boarded up shops, mostly off the main high street, but they were here. It must be a bit easier for a high street with tourism customers, because most of these shops wouldn't survive a damn month in a normal high street. Lyme is a very intimate feeling town packed around the bay and the beach, but I didn't find it much different to seaside towns in Cornwall and Devon, and so for that reason, Lyme only takes the 3rd spot. Number 2. Sandbanks? Yeah, I told you a curveball was coming and this is it. It's well known that Sandbanks is the most expensive seaside place in the UK. In fact, as of this year, it is now the only British seaside place with an average asking price of around £1 million. Notice how I said place? Yeah, because Sandbanks is neither a town or a village, it's just a suburb of Poole. So therefore it cannot be the poshest town in Dorset. It is said that if you dropped a bomb on the rich tax dodgers of Sandbanks, the UK economy would halve and old Gary would be out of a job. I mostly enjoyed this filming trip, but Sandbanks sort of put me in a dark place. I could not help but wonder who these people were that could afford this extravagance. Did they earn it, or did they just inherit it? Did they kick a football, or did they do something else with a ball? It was easily the biggest collection of mansions that I've ever seen. It was also the biggest collection of morons of ever. I'm kidding, I'm sure some of these people earned it through their superior intellect. But how do they get planning permission for these mansions? Well, when you own the banks, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Some of them were very ugly too. Others I could appreciate. Yeah, I have to admit, when I laid down in my airbed in my CX-5 later that night, I had big dreams. Then I went to Boscombe. What Sandbanks needs though is more vape shops and barbers. I didn't see a single one of them. How on earth do residents survive? I did have 2 happy moments visiting Sandbanks. One moment was when I begged an electricity worker to shut off the power to Sandbanks for a tenner. Whilst he didn't do it, he agreed it would be hilarious. And another moment where I noticed a huge expensive mansion, but despite all of the money they still had fake ivy from B&M glued to their gates. You can buy a lot of things in life, but you can't buy class. So what does it take to live here then? Well, for the first time in a long time, due to the problems within the UK, the average price has dropped just under £1 million. Don't start smashing your piggy bank yet though, the average is still £965,000. Last year, Sandbanks residents made a legal decision that they wouldn't allow overdevelopment. Well, from what I saw, they must have all been on a come down and missed all of this. As I did a circular walk of the peninsula, I kept wandering into people who were out for jogs, but it was almost like they were wearing a disguise. Were they somebody famous, or were they just a sad failure walking around Sandbanks gawping at the mansions like a loser? I bet they get so sick of tourists here. Security, these poor people are looking through my gate again. Buy more ivy from B&M or you're fired. The peninsula is also home to the chain ferry to get you across the Isle of Purbeck, and sometimes in the summer it can queue the whole way through Sandbanks. I remember back in the day when I lived in Poole, there was this urban legend of an old man who lived on Sandbanks in a shack for 50 years with his wife. When she died, he started to get offers to buy his shack. He was offered millions upon millions for the land his house was built on, but the man loved his shack and saw no use for the money and lived there until he died. I was just a kid, but I still massively respected this man, but didn't even know if the story was true. Time to find out if it is, and if you look carefully around Sandbanks, there are actually still 1 or 2 houses which don't seem to quite fit the affluent style. Anyway, it seems the story about the old man was true, and he was also a war hero. He turned down 10 million and kept the property until his passing. Nice to see an urban legend is true for a change. Unlike Jay off the In-Betweeners down at Swanage offering older ladies a bite of his cornetto. Well, it's well known that the Redknapp footballing family lived here, but reportedly not anymore. Rick Stein and his restaurant is here, the owner of Bournemouth Football Club, Carl Pilkington. Surprised they let him in, he's not relevant or funny. Tony Pulis, Graham Souness, and the owner of the Tops Tiles business. I bet this is one of the few places in England where every Friday a delivery is made by boat, and the packages make Sandbanks people think they can float. Can you imagine the goings on here behind closed doors? It's actually surprising that some moron hasn't made a reality TV show. Although, judging by the mood of the country right now, it probably wouldn't go down so well. Who on earth would want to watch some wimps decide if they want triple ply or a bidet for today? Whilst we choose between heat and eat. I hate this place and everything it stands for. Hopefully our old pal Putin is aware of Sandbanks. But he might not be necessary though, because that seawater only has to rise a little bit more and they are finished. For once, global warming is a good thing. Number 1. Burton Bradstock. Yeah, to be honest, I thought it was pretty great here, and I am considering trading in my CX-5 right now for a gaff here instead. Burton Bradstock is a village of a population of 688. Not far from the town of Bridport. It's not really a seaside place, but at the same time it sort of is, as the main village is only 10-minute walk away. Lots of you have probably been to this beach before. It is very popular with Londoners. Bradstock isn't just expensive, but it also feels posh and classy. It also surprised me how friendly everybody was around here. I guess when you live in a place like Burton Bradstock, you're living the high life. I liked how, despite the busy road here, most of the village is not on the main road. It feels like there's a real community here. Considering the small size of the place, it has a garage, 2 pubs, a shop, and a school and a library, so they are doing alright here. The school has received glowing reviews as one of the best in England from Ofsted, who were shocked that the pupils held the door open for others. Yeah, that is pretty rare in this country nowadays. It feels like a classy place without the trashy nose-picking glass and balconies of the last entry. This is what real posh looks like. It's not a competition to see whose security gate is bigger. They know the village is lovely and they do not want to spoil it. There was actually a recent crime wave in the village this year though, and it was reportedly one of the most heinous crimes to have ever taken place. A street sign for Donkey Lane was stolen in the middle of the night. Burton residents immediately rang 999 in a panic. This crime is actually unsolved, but I know a bit about it. The perpetrator went home to his nanny, who told him he'd been a very, very naughty boy and shouldn't do these sort of things at the age of 60. He checked his moral compass and couldn't devastate the village like this. The sign was magically returned by his butler the next day. Or so the legend goes anyway. The truly most dangerous thing about the village is the cliffs, which seem to break apart more and more, causing huge boulders to tumble down to the beach. If you want to live in what I personally think is the poshest place in Dorset, the average house price here is $614,000. It can be much more here though, like Billy Bragg's old seaside house, which he sold to the bank for £3 million, who were planning to turn it into a glass box. Planning permission was of course given. So that is the list. Did we miss anywhere truly posh out? I've mentioned before, but I wanted more than one series on this channel, and whilst this series typically doesn't do so good, it's nice to attempt a different sort of humour. And don't worry, I'm back to filming Turdtowns this week. So more than ever my little friends, because this series needs it, don't forget to hit like, share and subscribe to help Turdtowns thrive.